Hello everyone, I'm Dawn. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for visiting with me today. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, The Cutting Board. We do all kinds of things over here. We do true crime, food content, Disney content, hauls, reviews, DIY, SFX makeup. I have a lot of interest and I want to share them with you. So get yourself comfortable, get a drink, maybe a snack, because this is probably going to be a long one. It took a bit to put together. So in this video, we are going to discuss one of the most distressing and disturbing stories I've researched. I say that, but it's really hard to measure one against the other. They're all so disturbing in their own way. But this one is pretty bad. Now, there are plenty of videos already about this individual, but I really felt like making my own video and giving my own take. So Michelle Shelley Knotek was born in Raymond, Washington on April 15th, 1954. It seems she started life as a sadist, just fresh from the beginning. She took delight in hurting people she's supposed to love and care about, vulnerable people, people who she would gain the trust of and then pull the rug out from under them. She grew up in Battle Ground, Washington with her father and stepmom, her father Les and stepmom Laura. She had two younger brothers, Chuck and Paul. She grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family. Her birth mother, Sharon, was not exactly Mary Poppins. She was an alcoholic. She neglected her children severely and, exposed them to her toxic relationships. After Shelley turned 6, her mother abandoned her and her brother Chuck, leaving them with their father Les. So they went to live with their dad. Her birth mom cut off all contact, no cards, no anything. And for some reason, Sharon kept the youngest, Paul, but to his detriment, you'll find out later in the story. But eventually, she gave him up too. Shelley was a very difficult child. Her stepmom tried to be good to her, but Shelley was just poisonous from the very beginning. She told her stepmother daily that she hated her. She would, never do what she was told to do. She was a spoiled, rotten, evil child. She threw fits. Everything had to be a big thing. But, her dad let her get away with this behavior. She was daddy's little girl. Shelley also controlled her brother Chuck. He would do whatever she told him to do. Shelley always had to have her way, always, and would throw evil little fits if she didn't get it. And her dad would always cave to her. She also turned her brother Chuck against their stepmom, so she did that too. And her father did not try to control her at all. He never tried to control her. He just allowed her behavior. Shelley's grandmother on her father's side, Anna, she was as headstrong and vicious as Shelley, just as bad. And, Shelley learned from her. She learned a lot from her. So Anna and her husband, George, owned nursing homes. And Anna was physically violent with her staff. She would humiliate them, call them names, belittle them, and was just awful to them, even physically assaulted them frequently. She's punched them, kicked them, and Anna was just as terrible around her family. So, I guess we can kind of see where Shelley got it from. But from what I've read, Shelley was a nasty piece of work, before ever spending any real time with Anna. But it's no excuse anyway. It doesn't matter. A lot of us have been exposed to awful, terrible, no good people. We didn't turn out evil. I mean, some of us did, but most of us didn't. Anna forced her husband to sleep in a garden shed in their yard, even during the harsh winters in Washington, for 20 years. How does a man allow that in his own home? I don't understand that. I have no idea. But anyway, Anna mistreated everyone and was never held accountable for her disgusting behavior. Now, she mistreated Shelley also, but to a lesser extent, to a lesser degree. Shelley was her little apprentice. As Shelley grew older, she became worse than her grandmother. And what I'm going to tell in this video is just a smidgen, really. When Shelley was 13, she finds out her mother was killed by a boyfriend who allegedly beat her to death in 1967. Shelley's father, Les, explained that Sharon, Shelley's mom, was living with a man at the time and that they were homeless drunks living on Skid Row. And Shelley wasn't sad about this at all. She seemed unfazed. She didn't care at all. In her teen years, Shelley became absolutely evil and sadistic. After her mother's death, her youngest brother, Paul, came to live with their dad as well. So they were all together. All three siblings were together. And Shelley couldn't stand it if anyone got more attention than her, or if her siblings got any attention at all, really. She purposefully hurt her siblings. She'd put broken pieces of glass in their shoes, and she'd get off on it. She'd get joy out of them getting hurt on the broken glass. She tried to set the house on fire. She'd spread awful lies about her stepmom, about her family. She accused her father of RAPE to her school, and they obviously investigated it and, sent her for a physical examination. And there was no evidence. She was actually still a virgin. Her stepmom found a true crime magazine in her room, and it was dog-eared to a story about a woman talking about being R-worded by her father at 15. She was such a cold-hearted, manipulative, evil, lying person that at 15 years old, she was willing to go through a very, very invasive exam that no 15-year-old girl wants to go through. No one wants to go through that, but especially a 15-year-old girl, ever. So for this lie, she was expelled from school, and she drifted around quite a bit. And, everywhere that she went, she caused chaos and bedlam. She went to live with her stepmother's parents, and it caused them nothing but mayhem. But she was only with them for a fairly short amount of time. I couldn't get the exact number, but a fairly short amount of time. But she was a nightmare while she was there. She also accused her step-grandfather of SA. So that was the last straw, and they kicked her out. She eventually went to live with an aunt and uncle who she also, pretty much terrorized. Her presence in the household actually was so toxic. It was the catalyst in causing this aunt and uncle to eventually divorce. Shelley also went to boarding school, which was ran by nuns. She was a nightmare for the nuns. While there, she did the old broken pieces of glass in people's shoes, stole from other students, and the boarding school kicked her out. She's so wicked at such a young age. No one wants her. And Shelley eventually moves back in with her father and stepmom. But when she turns 18, she moves out. I'm sorry, I'm not big on the thought of turning on your children, but I'd be happy to wash my hands of her. Little witch. I'd be happy to be rid of her. I really would. Soon she got married to Randy Rivardo, who he allowed Shelley to dominate his life. He worked and did all the household chores. Shelley was lazy. She was lazy. And she spent all his money. And when they would disagree, she'd lock him out of the house, lock him out of his own house. And Randy worked with Les, Shelley's dad, at the nursing home. And she had her dad send Randy's paychecks directly to her. Even after she lied on him, saying that he R-worded her when she was 15, he still gave her everything she wanted, even after that awful lie. Listen, you aren't doing your kids any favors by letting them get their way constantly. You really aren't. Especially little demons like this female thing. Oh, and her dad also bought her a car, but it wasn't her dream car. So she threw a fit about that. Her dad also gave her money and bought her clothes, even though she was a married adult woman. She even staged a break-in to her home and beat herself up to appear as though she was assaulted, to try and get her father to get her a new house. She told her dad, "I'm not safe in this house." And her dad fell for it, and he got her a new house. In February 1975, when Shelley is 20 years old, she gives birth to her first daughter, Nikki. People thought maybe having a baby will soften Shelley, but it doesn't. It doesn't. She drops the baby off with Laura, her stepmom, and after a year or so, she returns and gets Nikki, as you know, as if her stepmom was just kind of babysitting for a few hours. And you know, Shelley meets her second husband, Danny, and has another daughter named Sammy with Danny. And her marriage to Danny is pretty much like her first marriage. She is domineering and just awful, but he finally finds his nerve and leaves her after 5 years. Although he leaves his child with her, so that's bad. But we're not dealing with the strongest men in this story. In 1983, when Shelley is 29, she meets her third husband in a bar. And he's pretty much taken aback by her. His mind is blown. And his name is Dave Notek. Shortly after they started dating, she told him that she had cancer. That's not funny, because she didn't. And it wouldn't have been funny if she did. I don't know why I said it like that. But you know what I mean. It was a manipulation tool to guilt him into marrying her, making him think that, you know, she needed him because there was no one in her life to take care of her daughters when she passed from the cancer. I'm sorry, a cat is scratching at the door, but the cancer she didn't have. So he married her, and Nikki is 12 and Sammy is 9 at the time that Dave and Shelley wed. And her relationship with her daughters, it was never perfect, never. But when she married Dave, it got a lot worse, especially for the oldest, Nikki. And the marriage with Dave starts off like the first two marriages. She's horrible to him. She's domineering. She's terrible. She makes him do everything plus work. And after mistreating him, she would love bomb him, like narcissists do. He even contemplated, because it was got to be so much, he contemplated removing himself from the planet with if you know what I mean. But he's eventually, I guess, groomed into what Shelley wants him to be, her accomplice for the most part, and an active participant. And this is when Shelley truly amps up the mistreatment of Nikki, her oldest daughter, and to a lesser degree, Sammy. But, Nikki was her main target. Shelley, as well as Dave, would beat up Nikki for the most minuscule, mundane things, sometimes nothing at all. They'd make up things. And they escalated in brutality as time went on. And anything could be a weapon. Kitchen utensils, fishing poles, cords, books, anything. Anything was a weapon. But Shelley would always love bomb her afterwards. And Nikki never told anyone outside of the home about this treatment. Sammy was psychologically mistreated and exposed to what she was doing to Nikki, so that was also bad. But the physical part hadn't really started with Sammy. It did a little bit, but at least not to the degree it was happening to Nikki. And Shelley would take privileges from both girls, including their needs, their actual needs, things you have to do. They weren't allowed to shower except for being hosed down naked in the backyard. And Shelley limited the time they could use the bathroom, use the toilet. And she'd even supervise to ensure that they didn't take too long for her, for her preferences. They often wore dirty clothes to school, and they smelled because they weren't getting regular showers, which of course subjected them to bullying. And Shelley would also occasionally lock the girls in their room for long stretches of time, from hours to days. Nikki was once locked in her room for a whole summer. Where she was given just a bucket to use as a toilet. But Nikki was happier locked in her room than having to be around Shelley. And Shelley would insult her girls, belittle them, and then do the usual love bombing. And Shelley would ruin every Christmas. She'd get lots of gifts for the girls, lots of wonderful gifts. And she'd look at the joy on their faces when they opened their presents. Then she'd take the gifts away. Just take them away. One year, Nikki was very excited to have gotten a Cabbage Patch doll for Christmas, but Shelley took it away. As fast as she gave it to her, she took it away. Oh, and this one really gets me. It's all bad. It's all bad. But this one, just for some reason, this just really irks me extra for some reason. One Christmas, the girls had gotten teddy bear pins, like little pins, in their stockings. And the little pins went missing as they unwrapped gifts, kind of getting lost in the mess. Shelley lost her temper and beat the girls with an electrical cord for losing the little teddy bear pins, and called them selfish and ungrateful. And Shelley and Dave, who co-signed Shelley's behavior at all times, kept them up all night looking for the pins. And they were found inside another gift. And the girls knew that their mom hid those pins there. Shelley just wanted a reason to beat on and torment the girls. And still, Shelley would continue with insulting them, belittling them, beating them, telling them they made her sick, that they were worthless. She's just a horrible person. She's just awful. She loved the power of being able to control their emotions this way. Oh, they're happy. Now let's take this away. Shelley, made a point of favoring Sammy, and she was, trying to create a divide, create a wedge between the sisters. Because if they were united, that would mean they might help each other, and, Shelley couldn't have that. Not at all. But Nikki and Sammy were very close, and Shelley could not control that. She couldn't control that, at least. And Shelley invented a new form of torture that she called wallowing. And the first time she did it, she woke Nikki up in the middle of the night, like viciously, turning the light on, screaming, waking her up, made her strip off her clothes and go outside and to the backyard, where she was then forced to roll in the dirt like an animal while Shelley shouts at her, and while Shelley barks out demands and orders her husband, Dave, to spray a hose on Nikki. So he's spraying the hose on Nikki, and it's freezing out, by the way. This is during their freezing winters. Then when she's done outside, Nikki is put in a boiling hot tub of water, from freezing to boiling hot. And this really added, as painful as it was, also added emotionally and psychological trauma, because Nikki never knew when it would happen again, if it would happen again, when it would happen again. So in 1988, Shelley's 13-year-old nephew, Shane Watson, moved in with the Knowteks. Shane's father, Shelley's brother, Paul, who was part of a biker gang, was in jail, and his mother, she was poor and she abused substances, and she and Shane were homeless. And and Shane, he loved heavy metal music, and he had a goofy personality, and the family really welcomed him. He was not yet beaten down by the world, even though his life thus far was spent with a criminal father and drug addict mother. He was still never exposed to what he would be subjected to in the Knowtek household. At first, Shelley made the home comfortable for Shane. Shelley, she bought Shane new clothes, and fixed up a bedroom for him in the basement. She bought nice new bedding, and gave him a nice, comfortable setting to live in. He even started calling Shelley and Dave Mom and Dad. And Shelley made Shane feel like a part of the family. She really did. Embraced him. Even Dave, who was reluctant to have Shane move in, grew warm to Shane. But Shelley pretty much just ignored her husband when he didn't want her to move in, him to move in anyway. And Shane contributed to the household by doing chores. But of course, Shelley's chore list is ridiculous, and the mistreatment started not long after the chore list grew. Shelley would, start punching Shane and kicking him, when she felt like he didn't do a chore, good enough. And guess what? Nothing was good enough for this monster, Shelley. So she started beating him, and soon took away his shower privileges, and he'd get hosed down outside. He would get hosed down in the backyard like the girls. Also be forced to do the wallowing. All his belongings were eventually taken by Shelley, and Shelley gradually made the basement she had set up so nicely for him into more of a dungeon. And eventually, his blanket and pillow was taken. So he was, expected to sleep on a cold basement floor, no bed, without so much as a pillow. I think that he did eventually get a bed, and we'll get into that. But that was after, that wasn't quite after Kathy moved in, but we'll get to that. Shane was really scared of Shelley, and he would do anything to keep the peace. Not only for himself, but for his two cousins, Nikki and Sammy. This poor kid. Dad in jail, mom homeless somewhere, he has no idea. He knows no kind of love right now or affection, except on the very rare occasions that Shelley love bombs him after a particularly severe session of beatings. And love bombing to me is such an evil torture too, Oh, you're so sweet, I love you so much, thank you. Bam, they turn on him. You're worthless. But at least the kids all had each other. And Shane grew pretty close to the girls, especially to Nikki, probably because they were closest together in age. And Shelley didn't like this bond at all. She didn't like this at all. So she'd force Shane and Nikki to dance naked in the living room. And it wasn't sexual. It was just to cause humiliation. And, and Dave would sometimes witness this and not say a thing. He'd just watch it along with Shelley. Not say a thing about it. He just allowed it. And, one time when Laura, Shelley's stepmom, came to visit the kids, she found that Shane didn't have a bed. And she gave Shelley money to actually get him one. And so Shelley eventually begrudgingly got Shane a bed. She didn't want to get him one, though, but she got him one. Shelley becomes pregnant at 34 years old, and she gives birth to Tori, her third daughter, and her first with Dave. People that don't deserve children. Kathy Loreno is another victim of Shelley's. She was Shelley's hairdresser in South Bend, Washington, and that's where she met Shelley. After a falling out with her family and losing her job, Kathy needed a place to stay. And the Good Samaritan Shelley said that she could move in their home. She could move into the no-tech home. And of course, Kathy became a victim of Shelley's, starting with chores. Shelley was a lazy sack. She was a lazy sack. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. She had cancer. She still is selling the cancer lie to her husband, and he's still buying it hook, line, and sinker. So, don't forget about that cancer. Oh, and Shelley would lie to Kathy's family to get them to disown her. So Kathy is completely isolated. She has no one, and she's made more vulnerable by Shelley. And Shelley would also... What was that? She would drug Kathy and make her think that she was sleepwalking and eating all their food in her sleep. And she also told Kathy, this is so messed up, that she sleepwalked and got into Shane's bed trying to have sex with him, which of course is not true, but she convinced her of that. And she also started beating Kathy and taking her possessions. And I know, how the heck is a grown woman putting up with this? How? It seems ludicrous, but Shelley, chose vulnerable people to victimize. She knew what she was looking for in victims. And that love bombing, it was intoxicating for her victims. So desperate for love and a family, it was intoxicating. And Kathy was, forced to do chores in the nude and had to sleep in the basement. The children were also, they were forced to mistreat Kathy. And Shelley also made Kathy get hosed off outside. The kids would try to help Kathy when Shelley wasn't looking. But Kathy, she wouldn't let them help her because, she knew, she wanted the children to be spared as much as possible. And it should be said that in the beginning, Kathy thought Shelley was a saint. She thought the sun shined out of her butt. People on the outside thought that Shelley and Dave were both kind, generous people who would lend a hand to anyone in need. That was what they were trying to make the world think. Shane was forced into beating Kathy, and he didn't want to, but he knew he had to. He had no choice, because if he didn't, then his beatings would be worse than they already were. And Kathy knew this as well. And Dave, wow, what a squirmy, mushy, worm, sad, pathetic excuse for a man. Just, he also would beat on Kathy. He pushed her, this is so gross, he pushed her down a steep hill that Shelley made her climb up while naked. For fun, for Shelley's sick amusement. Then Shelley made her climb the hill again, and Dave would push her down again. And it was a rough hill. And it's just a repeated cycle that the children are all forced to watch. They would all try to escape, all the children and Kathy, at different times, but Shelley would always find them. You know, she's a master manipulator and gaslighter, and, you know, the victims are so desperate for the moments of love bombing. You know, she's beat them down physically, almost into submission, and mentally. So 4 years after Kathy moves in, the whole family moves to a new place. It's a new house, which that house would become known as Shelley Notek's House of Horrors. Shane had to sleep on the floor, and she amped up the torture on Shane. Again, amped that up more than it had already been. But the worst was saved for Kathy. And Kathy's health is deteriorating. And Kathy would only be fed rotten food, and she was forced to sleep in the pump house outside. And in the pump house that was outside. Her hair and teeth have all fallen out, and it seemed like her brain function was declining. After 5 years of torture, Kathy passed away. And Shelley told people that Kathy had run off with a boyfriend, a trucker. This nasty, disgusting cow, Shelley Notek, was completely responsible for this, but, you know, she's not going to take any responsibility. And instead of changing her ways, learning from what she has done, she turned her viciousness full throttle to Shane. And she's trying to convince her husband that Shane was going to go to the police. And, you know, and Shane had proof. He wanted to go to the police, and he had proof of the treatment. He had photographs, and he did want to go to the police, but he was trying to get Nikki and Sammy on his side. They were scared, though. You know, they were scared. Shelley even tried to convince Dave that Shane was S.A.ing Tori, little Tori. And Dave brutally beat Shane. And, you know, Dave is such an idiot. I know he's supposedly a victim too, but I don't see him as that way at this point. He's worthless. But he's allowed all this for years. He's just as culpable for what happens. He's just as guilty. And he participates actively with what seems to be glee. Shortly after Kathy's death, or her disappearance, as the Noteks would have us believe, Shane disappeared. And the Notek said he, you know, ran away to work on a fishing boat in Alaska. I had a friend that did that. But Dave Notek eventually confessed that he shot Shane with a 22 caliber rifle, and they burnt his body just like Kathy and dumped his remains in the ocean again, just like what they did to Kathy. Shelley told her kids that Shane went to Alaska. She told her kids this, but Nikki knew that was a lie. She knew better. She knew that they killed Shane. She knew it. These kids aren't stupid. But there's more. There's more. Nikki and Sammy do escape eventually. Nikki stood up to Shelley and started wailing on her. She started beating her up. And, you know, Shelley was taken aback. She didn't know what the hell to do. So she sent Nikki to live with her aunt. But now Sammy is the main target. But in her senior year, Sammy escapes. Sammy has a boyfriend. She has a place to go. So she escapes to her grandmother Laura's house. If you remember from earlier in this long story, Laura is Shelley's stepmom, and Sammy would only go back to the house, to Shelley's house, to visit her little sister Tori. Tori is 10 years old now, and Shelley starts torturing her. She starts beating her, humiliating her, just being evil, the same she did to Nikki and Sammy. She would lock her in a dog cage and spray a hose on her at full force. And in comes Ron Woolworth. He moved in with the Noteks around 2001. As always, it starts with chores, beatings, food restriction, humiliation, hosing down. For 3 years. It lasted for 3 years. And Shelley would make him jump off the roof of their house, like over and over again, I think in just his underwear, causing him to have broken bones and serious cuts. And a few years later, of course, he goes missing. And Dave admitted that Ron died, and he buried him on his property. And Shelley said that he ended his own life. But an autopsy determined that he was murdered. They couldn't really... I think that they couldn't really figure out what the exact cause was, but it was murder. Nikki, Sammy, and Tori joined together and discussed a plan to take Shelley down finally. Because, they learned what Tori was going through, and, they couldn't allow that. They couldn't live with that happening to their baby sister. So the sisters went to the police, and the police listened to all three of them. I'm assuming they were all interviewed separately. And the police contacted Shelley and Dave and told them an investigation is being opened and Tori is being taken in by CPS. And so Shelley is so upset about this. So she sends Dave, her hero, to the police station to fix things and get Tori back. But that's not what happened. Dave told them pretty much everything. And I'm going to insert some clips of his first interview with police where he discusses Kathy and Shane. It was not easy for me to find, but I'm going to insert it right here.
Ask her what was going on. I mean, I just wanted to know because I had noticed a couple days prior that Kathy's vision was a little not right. And I asked if she'd, fallen or did she got into something and taken something, or because I did a little finger test on her. She wasn't, staying with my finger there a few days ago. And she says, no, not that I was aware of.
And this is
So,
in her eyes, you're saying, right?
yes.
Like doing this, see if she follows.
Yeah, so she wasn't coherent. I mean, she was coherent, but her balance was off. She'd walk or
Not too stable.
yeah, she'd stumble a little bit. So that day, I guess Shell, said she wasn't feeling so good. So she was lying down most of the day. And
So how many times, when you talk about you went in there and you checked on her periodically,
yeah,
from the time you go in there and you find her not breathing, from the time before that, how much time do you figure when she was okay?
probably checking her like, I don't know, every half hour.
Okay, so we're saying that half hour here, half hour there, everything's gonna be fine, whatever. And then the last time you looked, she's fine. What was she doing the last time you saw her? Was she just
She's laying on her back and she's breathing.
just normal, everything?
Normal, but a little labor breathing, like I had stated earlier today too.
Right.
Just breathing a little hard.
Okay.
And
Okay, so now this is what's going to happen. Then what took place after that?
well, Michelle got home. We didn't want the kids to find out anything.
Mm-hmm.
So later that night, I did it in haste. I didn't know what to do. I mean, we thought something was wrong with Kathy. I mean, I don't know what was wrong with her, why. And this had never happened before, and we were terrified.
Can you explain how you came across Kathy and about the time frame? This was in 19 what?
I think it was 1990
In 1990.
or 91.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
And can you kind of go over some of the details of what transpired there for me? So they're in your words.
Okay, it was at evening. I just came home from work. I was working on the road for set logging. And I came home and Shell, she had to go get Leslie down at Grayland. She worked at the Sea Star. I says, okay. So she says, Kathy's not feeling so good today. She's in there lying down in the bedroom by the laundry room. I says, okay. I'll keep an eye on her. And so I did, and Shell took off with Sammy and Tori. to Grayling, and Shane stayed back with me. Shane was in the kitchen doing the dishes, and I periodically was checking on Kathy, and she was laboring or breathing a little bit. First few times I checked on her, and she was still seemed to be in the same condition she was when I came home. And so I went in there another time, the third or fourth time, to check on her, and I noticed that she had stopped breathing. And I approached Kathy, and I went up and I shook her, and I asked her name and if she was all right, but I didn't. She gave me no response. And I
It's fine, I know that you've been through this already, telling me once, but it's important that I get from you your words. You talked about vomit.
I roll her on her side, and I kneel down and put my head there to see if she's breathing or if her chest was rising, or not, but neither was happening. And then I checked her pulse. She didn't have a pulse. And I looked at her passageway. You know, her mouth was full of, looked like vomit, had been there a little while, and her nostrils were full of it. And she's lying flat on her back, and I believe she had thrown up, and it got lodged in there, and she stopped breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I had her on her side, and I tried to clean out her air passage, but I wasn't having a lot of luck. It was completely full. And so I tried doing CPR, but no air, or artificial breathing, whichever one, but no air was getting to her lungs. You know, I tried this several times with my chest compressions, but nothing was happening. All I could do was chest compressions. I even tried putting her arm, I picked her up and in her sitting position, and because Kathy was heavy and I couldn't get her on her feet, and I tried to do the Heimlich, you know, to make her, to force some stuff out so I could get air to her, but it didn't work. So I did all this for 5 or 10 minutes, and I realized she was gone.
You and Shane got in an argument, correct?
Yes.
Can you describe the argument or this tussle that you had with Shane?
It was over the gun. He had the gun. He wouldn't give me the gun.
And the gun was a what?
It was a .22. A rifle, carbine, a short carbine.
Okay. And where did this struggle occur?
In a pole building.
And what was the struggle about? Just that he had the gun?
Said he had the gun. He wasn't supposed to have the gun. He had the gun. So I tried to, just ask him if he'd give me the gun. He didn't. So I just grabbed the gun and tried to wrestle it away from him. And he was pulling the gun back a little bit. I said, Shane, just give me the gun. And he wouldn't. So as we were struggling, the gun went off. Hit Shane in the throat. Shane went down. And it's like I described, there was blood everywhere. So I didn't know what to do. I went in and told Joe. What happened? So I told her to stay in the house. So, take care of Shane. So I went back out to a pole building. Wrap Shane up in a sleeping bag. I put Shane in that. I put him over inside the pole building inside. He had to stay there for a couple of days until I could get some stuff ready. I knew what I had to do. I didn't want to do it then or anything because the girls were there.
Did you send the girls away?
Yes, that weekend.
Where'd they go?
Oh, the people's houses, friends.
So you laid the material down on the ground in the same area that you did the cremating of Kathy's remains, correct? So the only difference this time is you didn't have as many materials.
No, I didn't have it, but
And you didn't use any other accelerants or anything else, you just burned.
no, I just had wood. All I had was wood.
You burned the sleeping bag with Shane in it.
Yes, sir.
And you burned it, you said like 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
The prosecution stated Shelley showed extreme indifference to human life. I think we all can tell that just from this information. And she was charged with 2 counts of first degree for Kathy and Ron. And Dave was charged with the first degree for Shane. Dave was also charged with rendering criminal assistance, which is another way to say aiding and abetting, and unlawful disposal of human remains. And in the end, Dave pleaded guilty to second degree for Shane's death, and Shelley pleaded guilty to second degree for Kathy and manslaughter for Ron. Dave ended up getting 15 years and Shelley got 22. And currently, they are both free. They're both free. Dave was released in 2016, and after being released, he lived in Washington along the coast and worked at a seafood processing plant. And I believe he filed a restraining order against Shelley after she got out. Tori and Sammy, they maintain a relationship with him, but Nikki refuses to see him. And Shelley was released on November 8th, 2022. While she was in prison, none of her daughters ever visited her, obviously. I wouldn't, except for maybe to spit in her face. So that's no surprise. But she got barely a slap on the wrist. Barely a slap on the wrist for the torture, pain, and agony that they caused to many people. Shelley is possibly responsible for one other death, but it's indeterminate. James McClintock, a veteran that hired Shelley as a caregiver, 6 months after hiring Shelley, he died with an unexplainable blow to the head. He left Shelley his home, $5,000, and his poor dog. I wonder where the dog is now. Well, probably not around anymore. In the article I read, it states McClintock may have met Shelley at a social services agency where she worked, which is where she also met Ron. I didn't realize that she ever worked, though. She was such a lazy sack. Lazy and useless, so that surprises me. But anyway, after his death, records show that Dave Notek began using his Social Security number. And I couldn't find any information on whether or not that investigation really went anywhere, except that everything was conclusive or something like that. So that's it for this video. For more information, I highly recommend the book by Greg Olson, right here, titled If You Tell. This is an excellent read. It's a disturbing and upsetting read, but it's also excellent. But thanks so much for watching. I will talk to everyone later. I'll provide a link in the About section for Amazon to get this. And yeah, I recommend you get it. Also, I want to tell you, in the back, this could be fun. There's book club discussion guide. If anyone wants to get this book and like do like maybe I'll do free memberships and do like a members only or subscriber only live stream, and we could discuss the book. If anybody is interested in the discussion guide. So it could be interesting. I think I've never done a book club before, but I think it would be fun to talk, not fun for this particular topic, but if anyone's interested in that, let me know. But yeah, grab yourself this book if the story is of interest to you. I found it very, very upsetting, but very engrossing. And, you know, I feel like we have to examine the worst in humanity to become our individual best. So, but anyway, that's it. I'm going to go. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to everyone later. Bye.